Throughout 2023, I experienced a lot of media. Whether that be anime, manga, movies, or games, I saw them and ranked them over on Twitter. No, I'm not calling it X because that sounds like I'm describing a virus and not a fucking website. Even if Twitter is a patient zero for some of the dumbest takes on the net. For simplicity's sake, I've divided these entries into various chapters in the description. So if you want to see me simply dunking on what I deem the worst media I experienced in 2023, or the best, you can just hit up the chapter list or whatever YouTube calls that thing, find the letter grade, and go from there. Also, media didn't have to strictly be released in 2023. It can be from much earlier. All that matters for the sake of this video is if I saw it in 2023. Although, if you have your own favorite or least favorite piece of media you experienced in 2023 and would like to share it, post in the comments if you'd like. I'd love to read it. Hopefully YouTube doesn't auto-remove that because they're being incredibly stupid lately with that shit. Anyways, with all that said, let's begin. When it came to picking the worst, there actually was a tie between 3 games. But after giving it some thought, it started to get a little easier for me. The worst media I experienced in 2023 was Milky Way Prince. How do you fuck up a visual novel in the modern day? Easy. You make a game in which you're punished for helping people, romanticizes / nearly fetishizes borderline personality disorder, has multiple moments where your choices don't matter, in a genre where your choices are meant to impact the direction of the story, mind you, have writing that is so poorly written in paste it makes you wonder if an AI wrote it, and has a cast of characters so unlikable, as well as having characters that are also so fucking bland that it makes some notoriously terrible fanfiction look good by comparison. Oh, but it has LGBTQ elements in it at least. Yeah, and the writing of that is also handled so incredibly poorly that it feels more like an insult to the community than an ally to it. Great. The best thing I can say about it is that the graphics are fine and the music is passable. Everything else about this game, however, was genuinely insulting to me and is a game I will definitely not be replaying anytime soon. If you want to see me going through this game, however, I do have a highlights video on this channel that I will link in the channel up top. But yeah, mental health is important, and it's okay to ask for help if you need someone to talk to if you're experiencing mental health issues. There will always be people to hear you and help you get back on your feet. Speaking of feet, time to kick this disgusting insult of a game to the fucking curb, and then use the foot 2 more times because I have 2 more pieces of material for the F tier to go through first. So, what happens when you make a game and swap out genuine passion with apathy? Not only to the gaming medium, but also the genre you're making your game for? Well, you get Yick, a postmodern RPG. Yes, I finally experienced this game in 2023, and I wish I hadn't. The story sucks, the graphics are passable at best, the music is mediocre, but the game really delves into some of the worst I play territory with the writing, characters, and the gameplay itself. Some of the writing is not resorting to plagiarism so bad that it makes James Somerton jealous. Its text comes across as so far up its own ass about how amazing and misunderstood his main character Alex is that you can see its own heart beating. And speaking of slow movements, the pacing of this game sucks too, as it will spend numerous moments positing on shit we already knew beforehand, and also dragging its feet for no real goddamn reason other than to add to the game's already bloated runtime. Actually, hang on, am I describing Yick or Pokemon Rejuvenation? My terrible attempts at jokes aside, most of the characters are also terrible. Most of them remain static throughout the game, or serve as a straw man for Alex to tear down because he is so important. The chemistry sucks, nothing about them works, and that's not even getting into the characters that effectively exist for Alex to make a racially motivated comment towards. That's just fucking lovely, isn't it? Speaking of beating the crap out of Alex, the gameplay sucks too. It's way too slow, it's clunky, the QTE sections aren't handled well, and sometimes it will just not fucking respond to your presses. Oh, and the method of landing hits will constantly change as the game progresses, and none of them are fucking good. It honestly feels like they were trying to be artsy and unique with this idea, but it was executed so poorly that it comes across as a jack of all trades but a master of none. There's a reason why people still copy / take inspiration from games like Final Fantasy for their RPG battle systems. Because it works, and it works really damn well. Whatever Yick tried to do is not even close to working, nor working really damn well. It's a fucking mess, and that's frankly the best way I can describe this game. A goddamn mess. And because this game is a mess, it's time to clean it up and then kick it to the curb. One left. ZX Advent was one of the worst Mega Man games I went through, and was a disappointing conclusion to the Mega Man Zero / ZX collection. The level design is horrendous, and as such I would go through large swaths of areas to find nothing at the end, because yes, this is a Metroidvania, and it's a terrible one at that, since it replaces the slow but gradual progression a Metroidvania usually gives, with large bits of nothing for long periods of time, or worse, you find a room with enemies that can wreck your shit easily. Speaking of, the difficulty spike is all over the goddamn place. Either you'll find places that are piss easy, or absurdly hard, with barely any in between for several sections of the game. Also, the story sucks and it ends on a cliffhanger that has never been resolved. Oh boy, my favorite! But what about the characters? Well, the characters suck. They're poorly written, bland, contribute nothing to the story, etc. Sadly, not even the music and graphics could save it for me, since even the music, which is often the best part of a Capcom game, at least to me, weren't good this time. and that's a shame. At the end of the day, this is at the top of the F tier because it didn't piss me off like the last two, but it was still a pretty damn forgettable / bad game for me, and that's a damn shame. Alright, that's it for the F tier. Now we're going to move into the games that are still bad for me, but have more redeeming qualities than these three did. Kicking off the D tier, we have Dead Rising 1. This game was a fucking chore to go through. The missions got heavily repetitive since most of them were basically save people who have about as much depth and complexity as a sheet of paper, or grab this thing, and this goes on for several hours. Also, this PC game, at least I can beat the shit out of zombies, is what I would say, but this game punishes you for doing that because of its durability system. Despite this game having a fictional scenario of zombies running around, weapons break, and you have to scavenge for more. So don't get too attached to, say, a chainsaw, because that'll break, and you'll have to search across large swaths of the mall to either find another one, find a weaker weapon, or rarely, find a better weapon. Do I at least get something for saving people from the zombies? Well, yes, actually. You get a bit of XP that you can apply to your stats, and the difference between the levels of said stats were so small for me that it felt like I needed a fucking magnifying glass to spot the changes. But, okay. What if I don't want to save them? Well, you can wait for the next mission, which takes a very long time. And it gets super boring because outside of getting weapons and saving people, this game has next to nothing to do, or even really pass the time between story missions. This is great. I've heard from some people that the sequels do improve on this, and I do hope that is the case when I eventually get to those. But for this first attempt, I wasn't a fan, and that's a damn shame. Next up, Scourgebringer. My fingers were pool noodles after playing this incredibly big disappointment. This game had terrible controls for both keyboard and joypad, as it felt like in order to do some of the techniques or movements, you had to bend your fingers all over the place, hence the pool noodles analogy earlier. The progression and planning portion of this roguelike game wasn't handled well at all, and it also felt like you will lose more due to the terrible RNG than you just sucking at the game or not paying attention. Kinda hard to improve from your past mistakes. Okay, one of the main reasons I like roguelikes, by the way, since that genre gives you the feeling of slow but effective progression and evolution of your skills throughout each run until you reach the end and win, when the mistake that caused you to die was due to the game rolling snake eyes. Also, the hitboxes are a bit wonky, which also is not helping the RNG killing you more so than you making a mistake. Complaint I made earlier. Yeah, this game was another disappointment, and it's sadly not going to stop for a while in this tier. Backbone. Backbone had such a strong start, with an interesting story in the detective genre, but it fell the fuck off hard by the third chapter, with poorly written pseudo-intellectual bullshit about the world and society, as well as characters that became less interesting as the chapters went on, and also the writing giving us plot twists that made little to no sense in the context of the overall story. What a damn shame. Morbid, The Seven Acolytes. The story of this Souls-like sucks with terrible writing, the gameplay gets incredibly tiresome and repetitive very quickly, the audio sucks, even the graphics are unappealing to the eyes. This game frankly screams, we have Dark Souls at home, but it's the kind of thing you buy from the Chinese bootleg section of your local flea market. What a shame, god damn. But hey, guess it could be worse. Gotta spend $25 on a game that got insanely tiresome within the first half hour, backed up with a weak sauce story about taking photos until you reach the top of the mountain, with missions that get very repetitive after a while, since they hardly change up what you need to do other than take photo but in a very specific pose. The punchline is Toem, or Toem, whatever you pronounce this stupid fucking name as. I'll grant you that the art style is absolutely adorable, and the music is tolerable. But for a game that goes over 3 hours, and is also $25 Canadian, the appeal of Toem, whatever, wore off for me incredibly quickly, and that's a damn shame. And speaking of games that cost way too much for what they provide, Mind Scanners. This game gets repetitive very quickly, the story is incredibly weak, the graphics aren't my cup of tea, the audio sucks. It was not a good time for me. This honestly felt like a flash game you'd click on during your lunch break when you had nothing else better to do, and that's a really damn shame. Beholder. This was very boring. Gameplay wasn't doing it for me, and it got very repetitive very quickly. The grinding was a massive fucking slog and painful. The audio was weak, but at the very least, the art style and the graphics themselves look decent. It's the most I can give this game. Death Road to Canada. Similar to Scourgebringer, a lot of the roguelike elements don't fucking work, and you lose more so to RNG than your own failings. The controls aren't the best, the game gets super repetitive, the Zombo point system sucks, since the stuff you get for it is basically tiny boost/additions to your route, which didn't positively impact my future runs when using them, etc. What a shame, because I heard a lot of good things when it came to this game, but nope, couldn't even have that. God damn it. Alright, that takes care of D tier, so let's get into C tier now. So who here has heard of the Holostars? They're a popular VTuber agency that merged with Hololab a few years ago. Well, I bring that up because they have a visual novel based on the English branch of Holostars called Doppelganger. It was also a fucking letdown. The story itself is okay, with the player characters reversing an alternate universe version of the Hollowstars English branch, or Tempest Guild, and having to deal with the sussy doppelgangers, and that premise is a genuinely interesting one for me. In addition, the graphics are great, as are the alternate designs of the Tempest Guild. My favorite being Machina, aka the Automaton, because I do feel like a thing tossed around to other people is a distraction until they get bored of me. This existential dread is brought to you by Capture Dark Fables, a shallow offline experience whose developers are absolutely not paying me to tell you this. In all seriousness, sadly, that's where my positives end with this game. The options you can pick in each route always amount to the same ending of you dying the exact same way in said route with no real change. Ah yes, because I too love a choose-your-own-adventure story where all routes lead to only one ending in each route. That's why games like Goodbye Volcano High are fondly remembered as a classic. In addition, some of the dialogue is bad and could have frankly used a rewrite, and the music is incredibly forgettable. Well, at least the lines are fully voiced by the Tempest. Yeah, I couldn't even finish that with a straight face. They do have a couple of lines and grunts, which is great, but that's about it for the vocal performances. Are you fucking kidding me? You couldn't get them to voice all of the fucking dialogue their character has? What the hell? Like, that would have been a fucking incentive, because, you know, a lot of people are buying this because, oh, whoa, we really like the Hollowstars. Wouldn't it make more sense to hear more of their fucking voices? Whatever. I'll admit, it's neat for fans of Tempest, but to me, it's not worth the $12. It's Pokemon Nightmare. I'm gonna make this brief because this game doesn't have much for me to say. It has a lot of potential, squandered by some weird gameplay choices, like constantly having to grind, and said grind being difficult due to a lot of mons giving little experience, making it very tedious as a result. Also, the story was incredibly forgettable. Basically, it's about stopping an evil group dedicated to Dark Grey, and you also have a couple of rivals to deal with, and they exist. Not much to know, frankly, with them, which is a damn shame. In addition, some of the pixel art could use some work, such as with the Taillow line, the Togepi line, and a couple of the Mega Evolutions like Meganium and Cresselia. Not my cup of tea, basically. Definitely not the worst. It's fun, unlike Radical Red, which is basically an experience I can sum up as slam your head against a wall until something happens, but it does have its issues. Survivor Castaway Island. It's better than some of the other Survivor games, but as a game overall, it's mediocre. The challenges are basically rhythm/balance based with the occasional puzzle thrown in, and by run 2, they tend to get reused. The alliance system worked fine enough, but the social portion needed to be heavily refined. The stamina system is pretty bad, and there's not much replay value/incentive to play again after your first run. Maybe one day we'll get a good Survivor game, but for now, I would just say stick to Brand Steel. Or if you have Roblox, the Outlaster thing. Mega Man ZX. The open world sucks, the bosses suck, the difficulty curve is all over the place, the music is mediocre, the story is fine, thankfully, but overall, it's just meh to me. So, yeah, I think you can tell what my least favorite Mega Man spin-off series is. Emo Astray. Another mediocre, sure, but surprisingly less than games like Dead Rising. I mean, it's in a different tier, obviously, but the point still stands. The level design was not my cup of tea, the physics were wonky, and the mechanics would sometimes just not work, like the dashes of the swap mechanic. The graphics are at least decent, and the music is fine, but overall, Metal Gear Solid. The story and characters are fucking incredible. The music is great, but the gameplay sucks ass. It's tedious, it's clunky, even after adjusting to it. The controls are awkward, the combat sucks, and it heavily drags down the game as a result. That being said, I am very much interested in trying out the later games. It's a fun movie-like experience. It's just not much of a fun game for me. Survivor 45. It was a fine season. Not as great a cast as other seasons. Some of the moments were pretty dumb, like Hannah quitting and Sean effectively quitting. Also, Austin doing effectively nothing in response to his number 1 ally getting blindsided in the final 6. Fucking stupid. And some of the challenges sucked, like the Barreling Along challenge in Vertigo and Mudcrutch. But it works fine enough as a Survivor season. Not the worst, but it's alright. Void Bastards. I like the concept of an FPS roguelike, and I also like this game's art style. That being said, the game can be really cheap at points. The upgrades are crap, that feeling of gradual improvement with each run is not here, and just fuck that ending. One Piece Film Red. Saw this with a friend, and the movie was alright. It was a great love letter to the 25th anniversary of the franchise, with all the cameos and stuff like Shanks and Luffy getting to fight together at the end. But Uda was not a great antagonist personally, and the story was a bit wonky at points. Still though, that final battle was pretty fucking cool in terms of both fight choreography and especially animation. Stalker Shadows of Chernobyl. I can see a lot of passion and effort put into this game, and the music and story are good. However, the gameplay hurts it in the end, as the AI for the enemies are cheap, missions are repetitive, the locations can be very maze-like at points, and the difficulty's all over the place. What a shame. Shining Resonance Refrain. The combat is fun, and the music is great, but holy fuck is it repetitive, and the pacing drags its goddamn feet throughout the whole campaign. It doesn't help that the story sucks, and its cast is very flat and forgettable. What a shame, because it had such a strong start too. And finally, for this entry, we have Total Drama Island 2023. which I find to be on par with the original. I like most of the cast like Bowie, Scary Girl, and the hockey players who I deem Voros Twin Core.
We're not the Island Boys!
Some of the writing was genuinely funny, some of the twists were interesting, but when it gets bad, it gets really bad. For instance, some of the cast that I hated stayed on for far too long, the writing, when bad, can get really fucking bad. For instance, that fucking stupid farting episode, just what the hell is going on there? God damn it. But, hey, at least it has a second season, which is neat. I haven't seen it yet, but still. Alright, we're halfway through. On to the B tier. Monster Train. This one was alright. It's basically a roguelike card game, and it works just fine as both a roguelike and a card game. It's not too deep or all that memorable, but it was still a pretty fun experience, which is why I put it pretty low in the B tier for me. Cyberhook. This was a fun ride, but it's also a bit bloated at points when it comes to the length of some of the levels, and it did get a bit repetitive as time went on. Silent Hill 2. The story and audio are fucking incredible. James is a great protagonist, and the graphics are still really damn good after all this time. That being said, the gameplay and the rest of the cast hurt it. Not helped by large swaths of just walking in big areas, the puzzles can glitch, the tank controls in this game fucking suck, etc. It's still a really good experience, but to me it has some pretty noticeable cracks in the armor. Sailor Moon manga. I like this series. The Inner Century were likable, though most of the main cast are flat. The first 3 arcs were really solid/good, and then a crash and burn in the last 2 arcs. The art was fantastic, easily some of the best of the time, until the end where the art started to dip in terms of quality, and the villains had about as much complexity as pencil lead. So why is this in B tier when I have so many asterisks/complaints about it? Because it was a genuinely good time. When it's at its highs, it's really fucking great. But when it's at its lows, it's very much noticeable for me, and that's unfortunate. So that's why it's not much higher in the B tier for me. Still though, I did have a good time with this series, but it does feel like it could use a bit more depth. Maybe the anime could fix that? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe. 911 Operator. I got gifted this by my girlfriend, and it was a really good time. Sure, it has some cracks, like a short campaign, but the gameplay is really fun, the mechanics work really well, the micromanagement works just right. It's good stuff. Blade Assault. This was a fun roguelike with great graphics and sound, replay value is high, and it rewards you with gradual improvement with each run, which is something games like Void Bastards liked. That being said, the story sucks and the balancing is whack as fuck for the cores and weapons you get during the game. Out there somewhere. Not the deepest or lengthiest game out there, but it's a fun quick platformer with some good music, graphics, and fun gameplay. Honestly, I needed a good palate cleanser since I played this after Beholder, and this fit the bill, honestly. Super Danganronpa Next Generation. Really good fan comic of Danganronpa with likable characters and some good twists, as well as some good art that evolves over the course of the series. However, the ending is not that great, and that turns it from an A tier to a B for me. Still though, I do recommend Margie Jan's, I probably mispronounced that, series, and I will link their page in the description, both to the series itself, as well as their own personal Instagram, because they make some really damn good art. Gara Red Requiem. I also saw this with friends, and it was a good time. Not all the characters are great, sure, but the story was good, the cinematography and fights were great, and for a first-time experience with Garo, it caught my interest pretty quick. So, yeah, this was a good time. Doom Eternal. Big improvement from Doom 2016 in every way, from level design to story to gameplay to graphics, but the audio was not as good, and the last 2 levels do suffer from a weird difficulty spike in comparison to the levels before it, and that does bring it down a bit for me. Rogue Legacy. It was a good time, but it is a little janky, such as the down/slash mechanic not working all that well, and the circus minigames were pretty bad. But honestly, Rogue Legacy was a lot of fun. And I am interested to try out the sequel to this inevitably in the future. Zyuranger/Georanger, I don't know how to pronounce this properly. Saw this with friends, and it was a good time. Main cast is likable, my favorites being Barai and Goshi. The stories are pretty good, fights are great as is the audio, and the theme song fucking slaps. My only issue is that the main cast could have gotten more development, but yeah, this was genuinely good. Is it better than MMPRAK, the American adaptation, though? No, not really. I think both are equally good in their own special ways. Skull the Hero Slayer. This game was fun at points, and I do like the various skulls in terms of both design and effect, and the graphics and sound are great. However, the difficulty gets a bit cheap in the second half of the game, and the game doesn't really do a good job giving you a means to help deal with said odd spike. Just feels a bit wonky in that aspect. Kamen Rider Movie War Ultimatum. Saw this with friends as well, and it was also pretty good for someone who hasn't seen either Kamen Rider Wizard or Forza 4s before. Liked the story and cast well enough, fight scenes were cool, suits and enemies were well designed. Good experience. Survivor 44. Not as good as 43, which I enjoyed a decent amount, but it was still a good time. Some stayed on for far too long, like Jamie and Kane, but the advantages were executed fine enough, the challenges were pretty good, some of the eliminations were pretty good. The cast that didn't stay on for far too long were great, so likable, like Carolyn, Jam Jam, Franny, Heidi, and Carson, and the story was great. It was, overall, a really good season. However, Carolyn got fucking robbed. Fucking third place, really. Like, I would have liked her to at least receive a vote. Oh well. A tier time. Starting us off, we have Juken Sentai Geki Ranger versus Bokenger. Saw this with friends, and it was also a good time. Like the characters in action, story is solid, humor's good. Good stuff. Transformers Devastation. This game was a lot of fun. The graphics are great, the story is really good, the audio is fantastic. My only real issue is that the combat and grinding can get a bit too repetitive at points, but it wasn't bad enough to severely hurt the game for me. Seriously, this game is really damn good. Now, if only it got ported to modern consoles and relisted on Steam. Fucking licensing bullshit. Mega Man 03. Marginal improvement over the first two games in every way possible. Combat is top-notch, level design is improved, as are the bosses, music is fantastic, story is amazing. It's good stuff. Once and always, this Power Ranger special was a good anniversary special with a good story, good cast, and great choreography. It's not the deepest out there admittedly in terms of depth, but it was still a good time and a great love letter to the franchise's origin. Don't toy with me, Miss Nagatoro, Najataro, whatever, manga. Genuinely funny after the rocky mess that was the first couple chapters. The characters are great, the stories are fine enough, the art is great, and it also improves as the series progresses. My only real issue with it is the cheesecake, and I'll give you 5 seconds to figure out why. When I got to those pages, I just quickly scrolled past it, because that shit was fucking cringe! Pushing that aside, this was a genuinely good manga. Mario movie. I was legit fucking surprised this was good. I thought this would suck, but it blew me away. Fantastic animation, great soundtrack and cast, the humor is great. My only real issue with it is, well, the story and pacing are flat, so not handled that well. But if that could be tweaked for a sequel, we might have one of the best game movies in our hands. And let's be real for a minute, they're gonna make a sequel to this, considering how much this movie knocked it out of the park in terms of those box office numbers. Just gotta give it time. Coffee Talk. Good stuff with likable characters, mechanics, and story/music. My only issue is that it's a little short, but it's not an expensive title, so that issue is partially mitigated. Still need to try out the sequel, though. Eldest Souls. Yes, it's basically a 2D Dark Souls. Yes, it kicks your ass hard, but goddamn is it satisfying to accomplish each obstacle it throws your way. Story is solid, music is great, gameplay is fun. It's a good time. Shadow of Mordor. Had a good time with this game. Combat's fun, graphics are good, gameplay is highly addicting, music is good, but the Nemesis system could have been done better, and just fuck that final boss. But still though, really good stuff. Flavors of Youth. Saw this with my lady, and it was a good time. Great animation, the anthology aspect was executed well, and each section has a good story and cast. Sure, the music's forgettable, but it was still overall a really good movie. Slayer Season 1. This was another thing I saw with friends, and it was a really good time. Genuinely funny, the story can be a little silly at points, and some of the characters are flat, but it still caught my interest and did a really good job making me care about the cast. I highly recommend it. Sonic Frontiers. This game was a lot of fun, minus the occasional jank here and there with the physics and combat. The audio was good, the graphics are good, the characters were pretty good, but the story could have been better. It's not terrible, but it could have gone through a rewrite. However, when I look back at this game, it also just makes me sad, because I've been down this road before with Sonic, and part of me thinks we're just going to be in another run of mediocre or bad 3D games again, like we did after Generations. I would love to be wrong on that assessment, but I guess only time will tell. But as a game, it works pretty well. It's still a good time, except for that fucking Wyvern boss fight. Just, that boss fight fucking sucks. But no, I still had a good time with it. Also, Sage is precious, and I will absolutely not hear otherwise. In all seriousness. Now we have the S tier, aka my top 9 favorite pieces of media from last year, so let's get into it. Mega Man Z4, a great conclusion to the tetralogy that manages to take what didn't work with 3 and improve upon it, as well as making the Cyber Health system actually worth a damn by no longer penalizing you for using it. The story is great, gameplay is fantastic, graphics and sound are fantastic. It's a good time. Red Faction Gorilla. This was genuinely a lot of fun. The graphics were good, the gameplay is highly addicting, I love the destructible environment / aspect, there's a lot of good variety in weapons and trucks / vehicles. Music is fantastic. It was a really damn good experience. A pity though that the franchise is effectively dead. Thanks Volition, RoboQuest. This FPS roguelike game was a lot of fun. Highly addicting, great graphics and music, gives you that gradual improvement that Void Bastards lacked, decent story, immense amount of replay value, etc. Put simply, this game was amazing in early access, and after leaving it a few months ago, they managed to make the game even better. Seriously, this is fantastic. Like a Dragon, Gaiden. For what was originally DLC, this was a really fantastic game. Graphics, sound, and story were fantastic, the gameplay was amazing, the ending took my fucking heart. My only real issue is that a couple of the characters, namely the main antagonist, were kinda weak sauce. But still though, this got me really hyped for Infinite Wealth and what they'll do with Kiryu's story in that. And of course I'll be playing that in the future, it's just gonna be a little bit because, I got stuff going on. But I will get to it. Pokemon Myth. This game is genuinely fun. The story is great, characters are great, I love a lot of the new mechanics in Pokemon, the graphics are good. My only thing dragging it down is the programming errors, like phasing through walls on the occasion. Fruits Basket manga. This one took a good while to finish since I wanted something to read while waiting around for other stuff. But this was a damn good read. I loved the cast, I loved the themes, I loved the story, the comedy. But yeah, no, I love Fruits Basket. Really damn good stuff. Record of Ragnarok's manga. No, it doesn't have the deepest of characters or world building. But the art is some of the best of modern day manga. The characters are lovable, the fights are fantastic, and admit a lot more depth than most shonen battle manga nowadays. The story is interesting. It's really fucking good stuff. But don't watch the anime because it butchers so much from the manga. Like, oh my god, it's basically the whole "look how they massacred my boy" thing. Monster Hunter Rise, a massive step up in comparison to the last Monster Hunter game I played on Switch, which would be Generations Ultimate. Gameplay is still highly addicting and fun. The audio and graphics are amazing. The story is great. I love a lot of the new monsters introduced. The tower defense-like mode was a lot of fun. The Palamute mechanic was great. Why did it take so long for us to get a goddamn doggy in this game franchise? It's a really damn good game from start to finish. Now, I only need to play Sunbreak. One day. Finally, my favorite piece of media from 2023 was Persona 5 Royal. This game is basically the KH2 final mix of the Persona series for me. It takes a lot of what didn't work in base Persona 5 and drastically improves on it. A lot of the dungeons and social links are improved on. Haru's character is treated better in this. The new story portions with Madoki and Sumire are handled really well, etc. This also gives new players and veteran players some fun things to try out for the first time, like the aforementioned story portions with Madoki and Sumire, the Baton Pass and Darts minigame to improve said Baton Pass mechanic, a better social link with Akechi, new shops and personas, etc. The cast is better, the gameplay is improved, the audio is fantastic. This game is fucking amazing. Now it only makes me wonder what Atlas will bring to the table when Persona 6 inevitably gets announced. Will they knock it out of the park? I sure hope so. They got some big shoes to fill. But yeah, that concludes this video. Did you agree? Disagree? Should I do another one of these but for 2024? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read them. Until then, have a great day.